Welcome back everyone, this is going to be our Unit 7 video on AP CSA. My name is Meek, I'm going to be teaching this class way better than your teachers can, and today we're going to be covering the array list, which is probably one of the most significant and useful parts of this entire course. We're going to cover traversing it, the methods associated with it, and how to understand it on your reference table. So with that being said, let's get right into the code. So an array list, conceptually, is exactly the same as an array. So this, you might remember, is my drawing that I used to demonstrate arrays from last video. So you'll see that the array list functions exactly the same way with respect to indexing. The first element has index 0, second element has index 1, the third has index 2. The purpose of the array list is rather to allow a lot more functionality with your array. So what do I mean by more functionality? First of all, the length of an array list can be modified. The length of an array list is mutable. That is in stark contrast to the standard array, which once the length is set in instantiation, the length of the array can never be changed, okay? Another thing to know about array lists is they can only store objects. They can only store reference data types. They can only store maps, treasure maps, if you're following with my analogy. So you also heard me mention that the ArrayList class is a class that is referenced on your reference sheet. And on that reference sheet, you will have all of the methods that the ArrayList class has associated with it. What is not on your reference sheet is the constructor, how to actually create an array list. So first and foremost, the array list is not in your program by default. Just like the scanner, you're going to need to import java.util.ArrayList. Now, array is capital and list is capital. Just so you all know, you're going to have to write this code on all your exams if you want to use the array list. Otherwise, your code will not compile. You will get points off. Okay. So how we create an array list is first we need to decide what type of object it's going to store. Let's say it's going to store string objects. So I'm going to say, first I'm going to start with my data type. It's going to be array list. And what type of array list is going to be? It's going to be an array list that stores string objects. And I would write it as such with the less than sign, greater than sign, encasing string. Array list string, I'm going to call it words, equals new array list, greater than, less than, again, string. Okay? And that's going to be closed off with the parentheses because it is a constructor method followed by that semicolon. So now it's time for us to look at our reference table and start going through all of the methods that you are given on the table for your ArrayList class. So first and foremost is the .add method. The .add method is just what it sounds like. You add an element to the array. Notice how when we created the array list, we did not specify its length, okay? So right now, it has length 0. It doesn't contain any indices. But if we use the .add method, we can add something to it. So right here, we're adding the word hello. Now, it's important to understand what is happening to the sequence of indices when we use the .add method. So let's say we add the word hello and we add the word bye. So we've got two indices in our array list right now. So I have hello here at index 0, and then when I added bye to the array list, bye added right in front, so that bye is now at index 1. And if I add a second word, that's going to add right to the end of the array list, and that's going to become index 2. So it's important to know that items are added to the array list on this side. They don't add from the back, okay? So they appear in the order in which they were added, which is useful to note. So when you see here that I'm going to add a bunch more greetings to the array list, and in all we have 6 elements in our array list. We added something 6 times. Okay, there is a second .add method referenced on your table, and that is the .add method that takes 2 parameters, wherein this just took a single parameter. What do you want to add? This takes 2. What do you want to add, and where do you want to add it? So this .add method specifies where in the array list you are adding a new word. Okay? So here we are adding a the word hi at position 1. Okay? So what does that do with respect to the sequencing in our array list? If I originally had hello, bye, and then greetings at index 2 before that .add command was executed, then after the .add command is executed, I'm going to take hi and I'm going to insert it here at position 1. So now hi is present at index 1. So what happens to bye? Bye is pushed 1 to the right. And now bye rests at index 2. And everything else is pushed 1 to the right, meaning greetings now rests at index number 3. So it's important to know that everything is shifted to the right by 1, including the item that was originally at that index. So we should always keep in mind what is happening to our array list when we call a method that alters the numbering of the indices. So I'll demonstrate for you right now how this modification has modified our array list by printing it out in the command prompt. Okay? So here you'll see hello, then hi is inserted at position 1, and then everything else is shifted 1 to the right afterwards. Okay? The next type of method present on your reference table is the .size method. So it's important to review here now. We have now covered 3 different commands that are used to get the length of something. Okay? First, we covered words.length, which is a method as demonstrated by the parentheses, and words.length is used whenever words is a string, and this method returns the length of the string, how many characters are in the string. Next, we learned about the .length attribute, demonstrated like this, where words is an array, and words.length returns the length of the array, how many elements are in the array. And finally, now we're looking at words.size, which is a method, and it returns the amount of elements in an array list. Okay? So I'm going to call the words.size method right here, print that out to the system, and you'll see that there are 7 elements in the array list when that method is called. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? Moving on from there, we have the .get method. So you can see the .get method demonstrated right here. As the name might imply, the .get method returns the value at a specified index, the index being the parameter. Okay? So if I want to get whatever is at index 0, in this case that would be hello, then that would return the hello string, and it would store it in this variable that I've set up right here. And as you can see, when I compile it, it's going to print out that .get hello right here, right beneath the number 7 that was the length of our array list. Okay? So next, we cover the words.remove method, or the .remove method. So the remove method, as the name might imply, removes an index from the array list. So if I want to remove the word hello from the array list, what that would do is it would not only delete the data, but it would delete the index itself. So if we return to my illustration right here, if I were to delete index 0, then now 1 shifts to the left and it becomes index 0. Then 2 shifts to the left and it becomes index 1. So it's important to understand that remove, the .remove method, is a method that alters the indices of other parts of your array list. So by is no longer stored at index 2, it's going to be stored at index 1 now. So you see I do this words.remove command, but the interesting thing about the .remove command that a lot of kids forget about is that it has a return type. It's not a void method. Because it has a return type, it's going to return the item that it just deleted. So if I system.out.print words.remove, it's going to remove hello, but it's also going to return hello. So when I compile and run this, I'm printing out the word hello from the method, But as you can see here, when I reprint out the entire array list, hello is no longer a part of it. We can also see this behavior present with the .set method. The .set method takes two parameters, the index that you're tampering with, and the item you would like to set it to. So, for example, maybe I want to replace hello with hola. So the .set method goes to the index you specified, it deletes hello, and it inserts hola. So it's a switcheroo. Okay, so hola is now at index 0, and the indexes of everything else have not changed. Also, the .set method returns the value that it deleted. So words.set will return hello, because that is what it deleted. As you can see, when I compile, hello is returned, even though hola was replaced here in the array list. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate use of the array list by filling it with a bunch of numbers and showing you how I would develop an algorithm to sort all of the numbers from least to greatest. Alright guys, I'm back here with the solution. Took me about 12-15 minutes to write this. So let me explain to you guys what's going on here. Okay, this was unnecessary. I forgot to delete that. Anyway, first thing you'll notice that we are dealing with 3 for loops, and 2 of them are nested inside a bigger one. So this is nested loops, a big throwback to the loops unit. Okay. Anyway, let me narrate us through what's going on here. Outside of the loops, I've declared a variable, temporary variable that stores the maximum value in any given iteration. Okay? So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to sort the array from least to greatest, and macroscopically what the code is doing is it's going through the whole array, it's finding the maximum value, the highest value in the whole array, and it's taking that maximum value and it's setting that value equal to the last index. And then it iterates through the whole array except for the last index, and it finds the maximum value in there. And then it sets that second maximum value to the second to last index. And it searches through now the whole array again minus the last 2 indices, and so on and so forth. Okay? So how do we do that? First of all, we have one for loop up here. This for loop starts with I at the last index. Okay, so I is representing a counter variable that iterates from the back of the array to the front. Okay, and it's going to continue iterating until we're at the index 0. Okay, so we want to set our max equal to 0, and now that we're looking for something to put at the last index, we are going to search through the entire array, and we're going to find the max. Okay? We're going to search through the entire array, we're going to find the max. That's what this loop does. And then we're going to go into a second loop, and we're going to search through the entire array and find which index our max is located at. Okay? So now, once we've gotten to this point, once we've iterated through all this code, we've found what our maximum value is, and we have found what index our maximum value is located at. So now here is kind of like the really abstract piece of code that does all the work. Okay? I am first going to call this command. I'm going to set max as my last index, which is index I, because I started at the end of the array up here. But we should recall that the .set command returns the value that was originally there. Okay? So I don't want to lose that value. I want to put that value back into consideration. I want to put it into the rest of my array. Let me illustrate for you what's going on here. So ignore this now. If I am iterating through my array and I find the highest number, 95, and it's at index like 6, I want to put that array and I want to put it at the back of the array. I want to put the index at the back of the array. But let's say there's a 5 here at the back of the array. If I put my 95 there, I'm going to delete the 5 and overwrite it with a 95. But I don't want to lose the 5. I want the 5 to switch places with this guy so that I can preserve that bit of data. That's what's going on here. The .set command is replacing the 5, but it returns to me the number it replaced. So as I return to my code here, you'll notice that the number I'm replacing, the 5 that I used in the example, is being set to the index j. Now you'll notice here that the index j represents where the 95 originally was. Okay? So now that we understand what's going on generally, we can understand what the code itself is doing. So the first for loop iterates from back to front. We set our maximum value equal to 0, and we iterate through the whole array from front to back. J equals 0 all the way up to j equals I. We're iterating from the beginning of the array all the way up to the last element that we have not yet touched. Okay? Which means once we put 95 at the end, I is going to decrease by 1. Which means this for loop is no longer going to iterate up until the 95, because we've already put that there. We already know that's the maximum value. Okay? Then we're going to check each element in the array. Is the element greater than max? If it is greater than max, it becomes the new max. Okay? Now, once this entire loop has finished executing, max contains the maximum value in the array except for the values above I. And all the values above I are all of the previous maximums that we've already put in order. Okay? So next we do a for loop and we find out what index our max is located at. If nums.get j, if the value occurring at a particular index j is equal to our maximum value, then we do the switcheroo. And once we do the switcheroo, this j equals I is just something to violate this condition and exit us from the loop. That should be a +1 now that I think about it. This is just a condition that violates our repeat condition. So this exits the loop. Okay? And this was just a reference that I used during my testing. Say, okay, what is the max that I'm putting at the end during each iteration of my array? Okay, and once we compile it, we'll see that the first maximum was 95, then 62, 46, 45, 35, 18, 12, and 12. So it's important to, whenever you're designing an algorithm like this, make sure your algorithm does not fall apart whenever it encounters a duplicate. My algorithm does not. So the sorted array list now comes out like this. Okay? Thank you for your attention, everyone. If you ever need extra help, come join the Discord server at Enjoy Life.